Good morning, class. Welcome to this session.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Welcome to this session of modern organization and management. Uh, since you have completed with your project management and the one more paper you had for choice along with that, I decided that I would be taking up those particular classes so that you need not sit for more time and we can exist within the given timing of your class. Um, 3 hours continuously, um, maybe on the same topic you wouldn't like, but then with your interaction, probably maybe it would be not that boring. But then I shall see to that if at all it is only me who is speaking, I would complete as much topic as possible so that we can finish off with the subject by next weekend or within 8 to 10 classes. So I hope we can start today's class. Okay. In our earlier class, we were discussing on common biases and errors that could be possibly committed in any kind of situation. And we had seen overconfidence bias, anchoring bias, and confirmation bias. In our today's class, let us discuss it further. And the first one is availability bias. Now, what could possibly be this availability bias? Now, we shall start it with an example. Now, usually what happens is that when we randomly consider things, we can see that a lot of people, more people, they actually fear flying over a plane rather than fear driving in a car. But then, if that was the case, flying on a commercial airline was really, it was that dangerous. Then, if we consider the accident, then there should have been equivalent of two 747s filled to capacity would crash every week, killing everyone all aboard. Even when this is the case, what happens is that we see that usually this media it give much more attention to air accident. So we tend to overstate the risk of flying and the risk of understate the risk of driving. Because more than what an accident happens over the plane, usually people would be killed in road accident, but nowhere it is being given attention. As much as attention would be given for the accidents that happens over the plane. So this is called as availability bias. But what is the availability here? Or what is the bias that we do? Now, what is availability bias says is that people tend to give more attention to all those information which are readily available rather than considering the actual fact. Or this the availability bias, it is the tendency to base judgments on information which are readily available or to tell, especially those events, those particular topics which tries to evoke emotions, they are particularly different, they are particularly vivid, or they are more or those which are more recent tend to be more valuable to our memory, and thereby leading us to overestimate the chance of unlikely events such as maybe even the airplane crash. Now this availability bias, it can also explain the fact why is that in a business organization managers who has to do performance appraisal of their employees, they usually give more weight to recent behaviors of the employees than to the behaviors of the employees 6 or 9 months earlier. Or it also explains the fact why the credit rating agency such as maybe the Standard and Poor's or the Moody's, they issue overly positive ratings, especially by relying on the information which are given by the debt issuers who have an incentive to offer those data which are favorable to their case. Now, here within the availability of bias, now there is something called as escalation of commitment. Now, what is this escalation of commitment? Now, this escalation of commitment, it speaks about people staying within those particular decision or acting upon those particular decision even when there is clear cut evidence that whatever they are doing is wrong. So this escalation of commitment is one among other problem which comes into decision making process. Now we can easily tell about this escalation of commitment with one such example which might make you clear about many things. Now you can consider just consider a friend or any friend. Now that particular friend of yours might be dating someone for several years. Uh, Now this particular person, he might admit that there are many things that are not going well, but then he might be still of the opinion that he is going to marry the one whom he is dating. And he might give the justification saying that I have a lot invested in the relationship. Now, this is what called as escalation of commitment. Now, individuals, they escalate commitment to a failing course of action, especially when they view themselves are responsible for some failure. Now, usually their behavior can be said as they throw good money after bad. Now, to demonstrate their initial decision wasn't wrong and to avoid admitting the mistake they made. In fact, what happens is that people who carefully gather information and who consider all this information which are very much consistent with the rational decision making model, they are more likely to engage in escalation of commitment than those who spend less time thinking about their choice. The main reason is that maybe because they think that they have invested so much time and energy into making their decision, that they have convinced themselves they're taking the right course of action and don't update their knowledge is the face of news information. Now, this also happens in business organization. Maybe there is one particular decision that they have taken, investing a lot of time a lot of resources, maybe money, as well as the resources, human resources. But then, with the recent happenings, with the dynamism of business environment, those particular decisions might be proving wrong for the business organization. Even after knowing the things, if the ones who have to take decision, they still cling on to the earlier decision which is proving wrong to the business organization, then that is called as escalation of commitment. Now, many organization has suffered because some of the managers or the manager of the company was so determined to prove their original decision right by continuing to commit resources to a lost cause. So this is regarding availability of bias. One way of seeing it is where because of the readily information available, we tend to make mistakes when we take decisions. Or because of the easily available information, we do not go to actually think what is right, what is wrong. And the another one is that we cling on to our commitment so much that we do not want to change it. We are not ready to accept what changes are happening in the business environment. Now, the next one is randomness error. Now, what might be this randomness error? Now, randomness you have heard. This is nothing but it is the way of dealing with chances. Most of us, what we tend to do is that we like to believe that we usually have some control over what is happening in our world and what is happening with our destiny. Now, our tendency to believe that we can predict the outcome of a random event is nothing but what is called as randomness error. Okay? And this particular randomness error suffers in very much when it comes to deciding about something in a business organization. That is, decision making suffers when we try to create meaning in random events, particularly when we try to turn imaginary patterns into superstitions. Now, this can be completely contrived. Uh, the best example we can give is maybe if we take the example of Western countries, there might be people who would tell, I would never make important decision on Friday the 13th. Or you might have seen people telling that because cat cross their pathway, they would not walk or they would sit for some time, then they start walking. All these are superstitions. Or it can also evolve from reinforced past pattern of behavior. Now, we can see this happening with quite a few people also. Now, you might see, Tiger Woods. He is one of the golf player. He often wears a red shirt during a tournament's final round because he won many junior tournaments wearing red shirts. Now, superstitious behavior can be debilitating when it affects daily judgments or bias major decisions. The next one is risk aversion. Now, speaking of about risk aversion, now mathematically, we should always find a 50-50 flip of the coin. When we take rupees 100 to be worth as much as a sure promise of rupees 50. After all, the expected value of the gamble over a number of trials is nothing but rupees 50. But then most of the people, they usually do not consider these options equally valuable. Rather, most of us, but committed gamblers would rather have the sure thing than a risky prospect. Now, for many people, a 50-50 flip of coin, even for rupees 200, might not be worth as much as the sure promise of rupees 50. Even though gamble is mathematically worth twice as much as the sure thing, this tendency to prefer a sure thing over a risky outcome is called as a risk aversion. Now, this is very much important when it comes to business organization, because we tend to tell that business environment, or when we take up chance, it is always a risk. And when there exists risk, when you have to take chance on some available opportunity, definitely you have to be such a person who has to take a risk. But then, if at all you are such a person who is a risk averse person, risk averse is nothing but the person who try to avoid risk is called as risk averse. Now, if you are such a person, then for you, a sure thing is much more valuable than an unsure thing, which might be worth thrice or fourth the time of the sure thing that is going to happen. So there are chances that this characteristic of a manager might come as a bias in the way of decision making. Now, to offset the risk inherited in the commission based wage, companies pay commissioned employees considerably more than they do those on straight salaries. Now, risk averse employees will stick with the established way of doing their jobs rather than taking a chance on innovative or creative methods. Now, sticking with a strategy that has worked in the past does minimize risk, but in the long run, it will lead to stagnation. Now, ambitious people with power that can be taken away appear to be especially risk averse. Perhaps because they do not want to lose on a gamble everything they have worked so hard to achieve. Now we can take an example. Now CEOs at risk of maybe being terminated are also exceptionally risk averse, even in a riskier investment strategy in their firm's best interest. That is because people are less likely to escalate commitment where there is a great deal of uncertainty. Now, the implications of risk aversion aren't all bad. When a risky investment isn't paying off, most people would rather play it safe and cut their losses. But if they think the outcome is a sure thing, they'll keep on escalating it. Okay, this is the case, but then there are also chances that this risk preference can be sometimes reversed also. Now, people prefer to take their chances when they are trying to prevent a negative outcome. They would rather take a 50-50 gamble on losing rupees 100 than accept the certain loss of rupees 50. Thus, they will risk losing a lot of money at trial rather than settle out of court, trying to cover up, wrongdoing instead of admitting a mistake. Despite the risk of this truly, catastrophic pressure coverage or jail time is another example. Now then, there are stressful situations which can make this risk preference stronger. People will more likely engage in risk-taking behavior for negative outcomes and risk-averse behavior for positive outcomes when they are usually under stress. So these are some points regarding risk aversion where we can speak about probability, randomness, how the risk averse works, or why is that people tend to avoid risk. All this we can speak under risk aversion. The last one that we have is hindsight bias. Now what is this hindsight bias? Now what is this hindsight bias? Now, this is the tendency to believe falsely. So, what is it? Now, after the outcome is known that we would have accurately predicted it, we still tend to believe falsely. When we have accurate feedback on the outcome, we seem pretty good at concluding it was obvious. Now, this is called as hindsight bias. Now, I can give an example. What happened in the late 2007 when the former Citigroup CEO Charles O. Prince asked Thomas Mahis, who oversaw leading at the bank, regarding that if whether everything was okay. No, this person Thomas, he reportedly told his boss that no big losses were looming. And Thomas continued to claim concern over the bank's risk and vulnerabilities. And Prince and other Citigroup executives relied on this person's word. Now everything was definitely not okay. And it seems all too clear that Prince should not have taken Thomas at his word. And because of this, during that year, Citigroup lost billions in its mortgage-related holdings, and Prince's job went along with it. What happened was experts faulted Prince for relying on Thomas. Thomas for relying on credit rating agencies and credit rating agencies for trusting debt issues. The former Merrill Lynch CEO John Thain and many other Wall Street executives took similar blame for supposedly failing to see what now seems obvious. That housing prices were inflated, too many risk loans were made, and the value of the money securities were based on fragile assumptions. Now, though the criticisms may have merit, things are often all too clear in hindsight. Now, what is clear in hindsight is rarely clear before the fact. Now, the hindsight bias reduces our ability to learn from the past. It lets us think we are better predictors than we are and can make us falsely confident. If your actual predictive accuracy is only 40%, but you think it's 90, you're likely to be less skeptical about your predictive skills. Now, this hindsight bias we can see maybe when we organize something. Maybe we have to complete it within the set time, but then we weren't able to do so. But then we usually tell this is what actually happens. That is called as hindsight bias. Now that might be actually what is happening. But with our case, it was not supposed to happen. But anyhow, we simply blamed it on the normality of things. That is called as hindsight bias. So, this is all regarding some of the common bias and errors that I have explained in detail. Now, with regarding to common bias and errors, yes, the handouts is not there. Maybe as you listen or if you get over internet, you can make a note for yourself, or listen back to this class and make a note of yourself, because now common bias and errors in decision making and all the points that have been explained is not something you can remember just by looking into points. So I don't want to make you people, you know, overconfident by thinking that if you know the side points, you'll be able to write. The first point in your common bias itself is overconfidence bias, and I don't want it to happen with you all. So listen to this once again if you have to know what common bias and errors happens in decision making. Take a side point for yourself. Keep that particular notes. So when it is your time of your exams, maybe you can refer it. Okay. Now we have already seen a lot of approaches to decision making, but then here are quite a few. Now approaches to decision making can also be divided on the basis of centralized and decentralized approach, group and individual approach, participatory and non-participatory approach, democratic and consensus approach. Now, the first one is very simple, that is centralized and decentralized approach. Now, what happens in centralized approach? Before we continue further, I would like to tell now anymore or henceforth, the most of the topics that we should discuss, we have already discussed earlier. So, what I do is, I would randomly in one word or two sentences, I would tell what it is, because otherwise it would be repetition of things. So anymore, it is your work that you sit, you go through handouts, you go through different textbooks and try to understand as much as things as possible. One more thing is with regarding syllabus. Now, the side headings that I use for uh, or the side index that I use in your PPTs or for you to explain in the class is very much different from the ones probably which has been given in your syllabus. But then I have completed thrice the things that are there in your syllabus. So do go through everything that I have been given so that it might be helpful for you. I have seen to that I have not skipped any of the particular topic, but then if you feel, if at all, if there are any topics that has been skipped in a particular lesson, please do let me know. So that if at all I have actually skipped something, I would take it up in the coming class. Now speaking about centralized, what happens here is the decision making, most of the decision shall be made by top level managers, and there may be some of the responsibilities which would be passed down to middle level managers. Now in decentralized approach, here what happens? Here that the authority to take decision shall be delegated or shall be passed down to lower level managers. Now when we take program decision, decentralized approach shall be followed. When we usually take up non-program decisions, centralized approach shall be taken. Programmed decisions are ones which are repetitive in nature. These things happen over and over again. So you would actually know what problem might arise, and if that particular problem arises, how to solve it, and all the things that are necessary to solve such a repetitive problems would have been well stated beforehand. Whereas non-programmed things are such which are different from one another every time. Now the next one is group and individual approach. Now all the decision making we had discussed it with regarding from the point of view of manager. But please do not forget that when it is a business organization and with the current situation in the business, it is always group decisions which matters a lot. Now, as the name suggests, in the group, now group decisions are such where there is involvement of the employees or the subordinates. Now, individual decisions are such which shall be taken by one single person. Now, individual approach, it is very much helpful when the decision are to be taken in case of emergency or when the time specified for taking decisions are limited or when the resources are limited. Or especially when the cost of individual decision making is lesser than that of cost of group decision making. All these times individual approach is helpful. But then group decision making in many cases or almost in most of the cases is always better than individual decision making, because when we compare both, the group decisions will have more information and group decisions can you know be easily implemented because everybody who has been involved in this decision making, they would be committed towards making decisions come true. Now this group decision, it is of much more accuracy, it has much more clarity than that of individual decision making. Not only that, it is said that group decisions also improve employees' morale. Morale is nothing but when you work together, when you are committed towards something together, is morale. And it is also said that because employees shall be involved in the decision making process, they shall have job satisfaction. And because they have communication, it also increases coordination, and also because they have job satisfaction, maybe the labor turnover would be reduced. But then group decisions are not always, good, very much advantageous for the business organization. There might be quite a few things where group decisions might be proven wrong. Now, whenever individual, in response to the social pressures, they go along with the decision even when they do not agree. Excuse me. when they do not agree with the decision of the group. Simply because to avoid any kind of conflicts, there might be chances that sorry, simply to avoid you know some kind of conflicts, they might not even tell what they actually think. Now, if you go through the handout that has been given to you all, now there are some of the advantages and limitations of group approach. Please do go through that. It would help you all in understanding why for a business organization, group decisions are important. How does it matter? Or it also tells what are the different ways it acts as a problem for the organization. Now the next one is participatory and non-participatory approach. Now what happens in participatory is that the one who has to decide, he usually seeks information from all those people who would be directly affected by the decision. Hereunder there shall be no any formal gathering of superiors and subordinates as that it would happen in the group decision. Here, the decision maker they only collect information and suggestions from the employees, but then they wholly take the authority of making decisions by themselves. But there shall always be participation of the employees in achieving the decision objective. Now, as opposed to this, when it is non-participatory approach, managers they do not seek information from employees because all such decisions that would be taken is not going to affect the employees directly. Now they tend to collect information and analyze it from the present circumstance, make decision and communicate them to the employees of the organization. After this we have democratic and consensus approach. Now, as soon as we speak something about democratic, it shall be based on voting by majority. That if there is one opinion, there are people who would be against it, there would be people who would be accepting it. And based on the voting, if the majority would be against the vote, then that particular decision shall be rejected. And if the majority vote would be going along with the decision, then the decision would be accepted. Now, in the consensus approach, the participant they usually discuss the problem and they shall arrive at one general consensus. Now, consensus approach is somewhat similar to group decision making, where there shall be involvement of many people. But then, in group decision making, some people agree to others because of social or psychological pressure. Now, group decision making reflects the opinion of few, but whereas consensus approach it reflects the opinion of all the group members. That is to say, until every person in the group agrees, there shall be a discussion going on and on. Now the next One is with regard to decision making style. Now, remember one thing, especially we are talking in terms of business organization. Now, if you are such a person who has to be working in or working throughout your career life, you would come across a lot of things where you have to decide. So, why is that decision making styles matters a lot? Now, it is to decide whether your choice, whether your decision impacts your team, whether it affects the entire company, how you would be able to analyze information, and how would you be able to consider the opinions of the others, which shapes your own decision matters. Now, why the decision styles are important? Now, maybe you are such a person who is leading a team in a business organization, or maybe a corporation you might be leading, or even maybe when it comes to evaluating your own individual work. Now, under all such circumstances, it becomes very much important that you understand how is that you make decision. Because when you understand how is that you make your decision, or how that your colleagues makes a decision, it can give you more improved and cooperative work environment. Now, if at all you are able to, participate in a very good decision making, it will always improve your leadership qualities. Now, normally this decision making style is divided into four different ways. That is directive, analytical, conceptual, and behavior. Now, speaking of it, it is viewed in terms of two. That is, in terms of tolerance of ambiguity. The first one is in terms of tolerance of ambiguity, whether that person has the capacity to tolerate ambiguity. When we speak of ambiguity, that is nothing but the clarity that shall be present in the circumstances and the information which helps to take decision. Now, the more clarity is there, the more information is there, then it would be, sorry, in all those cases where a person takes decision, when there is low tolerance, when there is less information, less clarity, that is called as high tolerance for ambiguity. When a person will wait for all the information, collects it, then it is called as low tolerance for ambiguity. That is the first thing that shall be present. The second one is the social or task driven focus. Now, this social or task driven focus, it considers the behavior of the others involved in the outcome. Now, those who are task driven make decision based on how to best achieve a goal. So, the first one among that is directive. Now, under directive decision, here people usually decide very quickly. There shall be a decisive thinking to reach to a solution. Now, this person will usually have a low tolerance for unclear or unambiguous ideas, or half information or confusing information. Now, they shall be focused on the task, and usually use their knowledge and judgment or perception to reach to the solution with some of the selective inputs from other individuals. Now, such decision makers, they shall be excel in their verbal communication. They are people who shall be rational in thinking, logical in reasoning, and this affects their decision making. Now, usually under all such circumstances, when the organization has to take fast decision, a directive style decision maker, they would be able to make effective choice for the organization. Usually, when it is short-term decision making, their style of decision making always works. The next one is analytical. Now, as the name suggests something regarding analyze, analytical, these are such persons who carefully analyze data to come up with solution. Now, they are careful and adaptable thinkers. Now, they will invest time to glean information, to reach to a solution. They shall always be task oriented, and also they shall have high tolerance for ambiguity. Now they take time to collect all the data and all kind of information before they can decide on a decision. The next one is conceptual. Now these are such people who can be called as big picture thinkers. These are those people who would be ready to take risk along the way. They usually analyze different options and possibilities within by having high tolerance towards ambiguity. Not only that, they are also social oriented and also they take time to consider big ideas and creative solutions. Now, usually they are persons who visualize things, different opportunities, and also outcome in the future. Now, this type of thinking is very much helpful when the organization has to take up long-term decisions. Then you have behavioral approach. Now, behavioral approach is the one which focuses on relationship more than that of task. Now, it is one thing which analyzes the feelings of others as part of their own decision making process. Now, it has low tolerance for ambiguity and a social focus as they evaluate solutions. Now, they shall always rely on information from others to guide what they choose. Now, they will also have pervasive communicators who value decisions based on a team consent. Now, their decisions are often based on how the choice will impact the relation. Now, that is to tell. Now, maybe we can give our own example. Now, there was a, you know, questionnaire sent to you all regarding this particular class. And one of the question was that if at all it comes to it that some extra classes should be taken for this particular subject, what is the best time that is according to you? Or according to you, what is the time comfortable for you? And 60 of you have given 60, you have selected among all those options which have been given. Now there would be one option which would be selected by majority of people among you. Now, that is the one decision, that is the one opinion, how based on that, the ability for me or the way I have to decide shall be influenced. And I shall see to that I will inform everyone that because majority of people have selected this, those who have selected something else than that, your option cannot be considered. And I shall see to that you are okay with that. Now, the same thing happens in organization. Might be the organization will have to decide a particular days when people might be able to take holidays. Maybe holiday for a week. Now there could be three different set of dates within which the organization is ready to give holiday. Now the manager might ask each one of them and they shall select what is comfortable for them. And out of the three options, one would be having majority compared to the other two. Now, for those who have selected the majority decision, they shall definitely be happy. Those who have not selected, they shall be communicated that their option cannot be taken and it shall be seen that they are okay with that. So that is called as behavioral decision making. Now we observe clearly all these things that we speak. We had spoken with the management theories, development of management theory, where we spoke about behavioral, conceptual, or all these different things we had actually covered. So try remembering all those things, what we explained, the things under that. Try bringing it here so that it shall be helpful. Now, after that, we have decision making thinking style. Now, based on how we think, there are two different types of decision. One is called as linear thinking style, the other one is called as non-linear thinking style. Now, definitely, one is the contradictory of other. Now, what happens under linear thinking is that usually a person he prefers using all the external data and facts and process the information through rational and logic thinking. That simply means I might be knowing certain things, but I am not going to allow my perception to decide on what a certain opinion should be. Rather, I would actually collect all the information and based on the information, I would be deciding on things. That is called as linear thinking. When it comes to non-linear thinking style, here the individual, they tend to prefer the internal source of information and thereby process the information. The internal sources could be the insight, feelings, hunches, or what we call as gut feeling, maybe the perception, the individual experience, all those things come under non-linear thinking. Now, why is it important when it comes to a business organization? Whether it could be linear thinking style or whether it could be non-linear thinking style. Now, speaking of this, now linear thinking is always analytical, rational, and logical as it has been suggested. Now, they move forward usually like a straight point and with an ending point. And usually our brain also often want to make simple straight and connection in a sequential order. Now usually when we have to deliver accurate information, you know such linear thinking always helps. Now, what about this non-linear thinking? Now, here, as opposite of linear thinking, the non-linear thinker, they use intuitive, creative, artistic, and emotional thinking style. Now, this is less restrictive thought, usually expand in multiple directions, which allows multiple points of logic rather than just one answer. Now, why does it becomes important in business organization? It is both linear thinking and non-linear thinking are important. Now, for some of the problems, it should always be thought in a linear way, based on the data, based on the facts. But then there might also be such a problem, such a situation, which expects you to think in a different way, a rational way, logical way, irrational way, where you can think out of the box, can come up with the new ideas, you can make things better. In all such cases, non-linear thinking style shall be helpful. Now, usually, this linear thinking, uh, now if we, this is organization, this is management, but then you have one more subset called as organizational behavior. Now, this particular topic, linear thinking style and non-linear thinking style, or why a person decides somehow, is a topic which can be much more relatable for organizational behavior when we speak of it. So, this particular topic comes, rather than a mechanical way, it shall always include the behavior of the employees who work. Now, what happens with the linear thinkers is that they like to avoid relationship and communication by minimizing their importance, because it is those are such things which detracts from their actual aim. Now, their linear way of thinking has undoubtedly served them well in creating, maybe very good decision for the organization. Now, but learning to review the brain to take a broader perspective can be both psychologically and emotionally challenging. Oh. After this, we have something called as thinking style profile. Uh, Now, speaking about thinking style profile, as you can see in your PowerPoint, there are five different ways. Now, all those people can be divided into based on these five categories. That is synthesis, idealist, pragmatist, analyst, and the realist. The words within themselves are self-explanatory as to what they are. Now, when we speak about synthesis, now these are such people who have their own creativity and curiosity. They are such people who consider different ideas, different views, and different possibilities. That is to tell, these are such people who, instead of leading with logical, they are such people who would like to try or explore things on a more abstract ideas. Now they have the tendency to question what if, and consider different possibilities and views. Now, there are opinions from management thinkers that synthesis are some people, like argumentative because they would be having the capacity to always come up with quick attention as they oppose the views. That does not mean that they will not accept, but they have this capacity of questioning it. But then these creative thinkers, they can prevent perception by first acknowledging others' ideas before presenting alternatives. Then we have idealists. Now these are such people who would always try to work towards the bigger goals of the organization. They usually set high performance standards, and not only that, they expect everyone to work in the same manner. Or we can call them as the goal setters. Now, with such people, there might be others who perceive them to be perfectionist. But according to these idealists, they're simply doing what best they can do. Not that they're doing it perfect, but what is possibly best from their side, they're doing it. Now, they shall always be future oriented, they give importance for teamwork, and also the way they work, the way they put hard work, they expect everyone to do the same. But then these idealists also have to realize that others have their own standards, others will be having their own expectations, their own way of thinking, which which might not be as same as with that of theirs. Then comes the pragmatists, or whom we can call as the logical thinkers. They usually take logical approach for any kind of problem solving. They usually focus on immediate results, and they are opposed for the long term effects. Now these are such people who do not waste time, but they normally, as soon as the situation arises, they tend to take action. Not only that, they solve problems in a very logical way, or what we can call it as step by step way of solving it. Now, their aim is getting things done. But then, they would, if a problem is there, their aim solve it as soon as possible, as fast as possible. But they'll never think how it might affect in the future or the big picture, unless like the idealists, they're never interested in that. Then comes analysts. Now speaking about analysts, they are such people who are interested in facts and the actual data points. Now they will always have a clear procedure for doing all the things. The best example we can give who do such things are scientists. If the number is that, then accept it. If it is not, then reject the particular thing. They can be called as the rational intellectuals. Now they always work based on some method, some procedure. Now they tend to collect all the facts and information, they measure it, analyze it, categorize it along they do the work, and they will be such person who always tries to do things correctly and in a rational way. Now, usually, if at all they have to face people who are different from that of their opinion, then definitely they tend to discount all such ideas. So this analyst can also be called as the rational intellectual. Then we have realists whom we call as the perfect problem solvers. Now what happens with these people is that now they tackle problem head on and don't feel challenged by you know everyday problems that they'll have to face. Now they shall be quick on their feet and do whatever it takes to solve the problem. Having said, realists they bore easily. Now they don't feel challenged by everyday problems or stresses or as most of them do. Yet they want to be challenged. These realists they can benefit like pragmatists from taking a step back and looking at a problem from different angles. Now they should take more time to gather all the information that is available to them and find the best solution. Now, why is that this thinking style is important when it comes for a business organization? Now, usually when the business has to collaborate, communicate, all this thinking style matters a lot because this collaboration and communication can be difficult if thinking differs or if it is not acknowledged and addressed. So this is regarding thinking style profile. Now, why is it important or how is it important is that based on these five different things, know what your thinking style is. Whether you're a synthesis, whether you're an idealist, whether you're a pragmatist, analyst, or realist. So, what after once you do that? Now, each thinking style has merit of its own, and somewhere it has demerit over others. Merits try to improve it, demerits try to solve it. Or it is also important from the point of view that the way you think is far different from the way your team worker thinks or your colleague thinks. So acknowledging all those things becomes important when you work together. Now the next one is with regard to the effective decision making. Now you can see a continuum that has been given in your PPT. Have to improve decision making. Now all the words that has been given there has been already discussed. It might be efficiency, it might be effectiveness, it might be the technical skills or the people skills. Yes, now technical skills are the skills that are required to solve a particular method, a particular task, a mechanical task, yes, or the way the things goes in the office. Now, people skills are the ability of the individuals how they have their relation with other individuals. Now, efficiency and effectiveness is nothing but the right thing to do and doing things right. Now in the last, the continuum, you have comfort zone and the value. What it represents is that with the data capture, the technical skills are very much necessary. People skills are less necessary. Your comfort zone can be more, the value given would be less. Here efficiency is much more necessary. Here doing things right becomes important. And as it goes on, everything starts to, when it comes to reports, technical skills are necessary. A little bit of people skills is also much more necessary. The comfort zone starts decreasing, the value starts increasing. The efficiency, the effectiveness is also important. Then comes analysis, then is the insight, then is influence. When it comes to impacting, people skills are very much necessary and effectiveness is much more. That doing right things becomes important and value shall be given more importance than the comfort zone. Because no matter we have spoken so much of decision making, remember one thing, all this decision they should be capable of being implemented, otherwise there is no use of it. It could be on a personal basis or on a organizational level. Excuse me. So this is the normal decision making process that has been shown um, in a slight different way, where you have strategic position, option, implementation, and risk. You have context mindset, and first what you have to do is frame the issue, assemble the information, select alternatives, decision, manage implementation, and finally everything shall be impacted. And how it can be done is given. Now there are quite a few things regarding what are such things which might, affect decision making. Now the first one is, if at all there are less information, or than telling less information, it could be less in number, but if the information is not enough for taking decision, then it might be a decision based on bias. Usually it is suggested to take time to gather information, especially the necessary data, and then decide. Even though the time is very much less, whatever information is necessary, it will have to be selected, then the decision are to be taken. This is where they suggest that one should give priority for information gathering, especially by deciding which information will be most important to person. Now that can be one problem. The other problem can be that there is a lot of information which cannot be handled. So having too much information is also a problem. Now, this having too much information is sometimes also called as analysis paralysis, and it is also used as a tactic to delay organizational decision making, with those involved demanding ever more information before they can decide. Now, this problem can often be resolved by gathering everyone together to decide what information is really important and why, and by setting a clear timescale for decision making, including information gathering stage. Then another problem is that there might be too many people in decision making. Now, because with too many people, there are too many views, there are too many opinions, and too many values of their own. So, what is important to know is what these different opinions, views are, and why and how they are important for the organization. Because what one view can be essential for one person to take a responsibility for making a decision. Sometimes any decision is better than none. Now, as we tell this, the same problem we have is vested interest. Now, decision making process it often founded, under the weight of vested interest. Now, these vested interests are often not overly expressed, but usually they tend to create crucial blockage because they are not said clearly. It is hard to identify them, and when you don't know the problem at all, it is much more difficult to solve it. Then you have one more, that is emotional attachment. Now, people tend to be very much attached to status quo. So decisions tend to involve the prospect of change, which many people find difficult. Now, for more about overcoming such problems, you know, rather than thinking emotionally, people should try to think logical. Then comes no emotional attachment. Now, sometimes it becomes difficult that you cannot take decision because one person may not just not care on way or the other. So in such case, a structured decision making process can often help by identifying some very real problems of some of the particular course of action. Now there are many different techniques of decision making which have been developed over time with a different velocity. Some are simple, such as rules of thumb, to extremely complex procedure as we saw in our quantitative techniques. So all that should be used in making a decision effective.